In Module 1, we talked about the importance of natural capital. In this module, we focused on the natural environment of our coasts and seas so that we can understand their importance for us and future generations. The ocean covers more than 2/3 of our planet and is the foundation of life on Earth. It regulates the Earth's climate, produces oxygen in the air that we breathe, and absorbs carbon dioxide. The wider Caribbean region is composed of 3 large marine ecosystems, or LMEs, in the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the North Brazil Shelf. Within the Caribbean LME, there are 3 main types of smaller ecosystem: coastal reefs and associated habitats such as mangroves, seagrass beds, and coastal lagoons. The continental shelf ecosystem, which is the nearshore waters and seabed habitats between the outer edge of the coral reef and where the ocean drops off to the deep sea. And the offshore pelagic ecosystem, which includes offshore waters and the animals that live within it.
The marine space is like 40 times the terrestrial space. It means that we need to place tremendous emphasis on our marine environment, because whatever we do on the land, it invariably will affect what happens in the sea and the oceans generally.
35% of all marine life in the world lives on coral reefs, and an amazing 10% of the world's coral reefs can be found in the Caribbean. They are one of the most biodiversity-rich ecosystems in the world, providing habitat and food for an amazing variety of marine plants and animals, including 1/4 of all marine fish species. Coral reefs create complex structures, which serve as habitats, shelters, nurseries and foraging grounds for almost all types of marine organism. Up to 4,000 individual species can coexist on a single reef at a density 100 times greater than is average for the open ocean. In the OECS, the majority of reefs are fringing coral reefs that grow near the coastline and are separated from the shore by shallow lagoons. Because they're near shore, coral reefs are closely linked to both mangroves and seagrass beds, and many marine species move between these ecosystems during their lives. However, this connectivity with land makes them vulnerable to human impacts such as pollution and climate change, and means that managing activities on land is also important. Disturbance of any ecosystem component can result in widespread impact. For example, overfishing of parrotfish and a dieback in sea urchins has resulted in algal growth covering many reefs in the OECS, killing the coral. Parrotfish and urchins feed on excess algae, and without them, the algae multiplies out of control, creating a fundamental shift in the ecosystem which can lead to total collapse. In fact, average coral cover in the Caribbean declined over 50% between 1970 and 2012, mainly due to the impacts of human activity, including climate change, a trend that isn't slowing down. Work is being done to rebuild though. In Grenada, coral nurseries, where coral fragments are grown until they're large enough to be transplanted to new areas, have been installed in Grand Anse Bay and off Mabuya Island, Carriacou. Local young people have been trained to maintain these nurseries, building both local expertise and employment. The corals grown in these nurseries will be used to replant parts of the Grand Anse Reef Bank and the Bay Low Barrier Reef, and will hopefully help these reefs to become vibrant marine ecosystems once more. And it's not just in Grenada, but this is happening in St. Lucia and other OECS nations as well.
We have been working a lot with communities in the area of habitat restoration, and we've specifically focused on coral reef restoration, where we have been working with communities to empower them and get them involved in coral restoration activities. Now, for me, the opportunity to enhance their livelihoods by not only expanding their skills, but having the potential for supplementary income is key. And what we have been doing with the assistance of German Development Bank, GIZ, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Sandals Foundation, and our local partners is develop educational tools. We've developed a national vocational qualification in coral restoration that is actually at this point at the level of an associate degree. And we have actually trained with the assistance and funding from the Caribbean Development Bank under the Basic Needs Trust Fund. We have been working with communities, and we have a cohort of 15 persons that we have trained so far in coral restoration activities.
In the OECS, most coastal wetlands are mangrove swamps. Mangroves grow where fresh water meets the sea and are subject to the twice-daily ebb and flow of tides. These ecosystems are only found in tropical and subtropical areas and have salt-tolerant trees, shrubs and other vegetation growing in seawater from the low to high tide zone. Mangrove swamps have often been neglected because they look like a mass of impenetrable woody vegetation. They are often misunderstood and viewed as mosquito-infested swamps or wasteland. But they provide a rich habitat for over 2,000 species of animals and plants and are the breeding and nursery grounds for fish, shrimp, prawns, crabs and shellfish. They sustain billions of worms, barnacles, oysters, sponges and other invertebrates, some of which live attached to the mangrove roots. These in turn feed those fish and shrimp which support wading birds and other larger predators. They also provide important coastal protection from waves and flooding as the mangroves absorb energy from storms and provide shelter for areas inland. In the last 20 years, at least 35% of the world's mangrove forests have been lost. These losses exceed those for both tropical rainforests and coral reefs. They are threatened by land reclamation, wastewater and solid waste pollution, climate change and overharvesting, not helped by their bad reputation. In the OECS, there are projects ongoing to protect and restore these important ecosystems, such as the protection given to Mancote, the largest mangrove forest in St. Lucia and the OECS, and the restoration work ongoing in Grenville, a fishing community on the northeast coast of Grenada that has seen severe flooding and erosion. Seagrass is a submerged flowering plant found throughout the OECS that grows in shallow water meadows in sand or mud. It is often found in the lagoons between beaches and coral reefs or in protected bays and estuaries. These meadows are crucial for stabilising the seabed, providing shelter and nursery grounds for fish and a food source for many organisms, including turtles. They also help to improve water quality by slowing down currents and allowing fine particles to settle out. Seagrass meadows are currently also under threat. They can be destroyed or removed completely by coastal developments, scarred by anchors and propellers, shaded by marinas and piers, and impacted by pollution from sewage, agricultural fertilisers, hydrocarbons, pesticides, and other toxic waste. On top of these impacts, there is also an invasive species affecting the region that has spread all the way from the Indian Ocean and Red Sea, most likely via boats. This invasive seagrass is replacing native Caribbean seagrass and causing ecological damage. If you see any, you can report it via this website and contribute to ongoing research on the spread of this invasive species. The importance of seagrass beds has been recognised in many places in the OECS. For example, the Grandance Bay Marine Protected Area was put in place on Grenada's busiest tourist beach to protect the seagrass beds, which are an important food source for the local turtle population. Talking of turtles, the Caribbean once supported huge populations of sea turtles. Early records talk of groups of turtles so massive that net fishing was impossible, and even moving ships was difficult. Today, some of the largest breeding populations the world has ever known are virtually gone. Because sea turtles are highly migratory, what appears as a decline in a local population may be a consequence of activity hundreds or thousands of kilometres away. Therefore, while local conservation is crucial, international action is also required. Threats to turtles include commercial fishing for meat and shells, entanglement or eating marine litter, nests and hatching being disrupted by artificial lights and coastal development, and marine pollution. For nearly 50 years, the Wider Caribbean Sea Turtle Conservation Network, or WIDECAST, has worked with more than 40 Caribbean nations to develop a unified management framework.
Culturally, being able to kill turtles and use it for livelihoods, for food, use the turtle eggs, etc. for food, that has been a cultural practice. However, we now look at the fact that this is biodiversity that has to be protected, and the students in Grenada who benefit from the SPECTO program. SPECTO is a community-based organization, the St. Patrick's Environmental, Cultural and Tourism Organization, and they train tour guides. They work with international donor agencies, they work with local business partners. They train guides to be able to understand how the turtles nest, how to protect that resource, because Grenada's tourism asset is based on these ecotourism activities. Students, they provide free tours for students who come to look at the tours. And these students are important advocates. They are tomorrow's leaders. They are the future that we're protecting the environment for. And they also can go back home and say to their relatives, Uncle Charlie, you know, you don't need to kill the turtles for meat because you sell this turtle for $100, but this is an industry for Grenada that brings in 30, 40, 50, 60, $100,000 annually in terms of visitors who travel just to come to see this biodiversity that's not available in their own home country. So it's as simple as that, it's as intricate as that, it's as real as that.
Marine mammals are very important to the OECS, and at least 32 species have been documented within the region. For many of these species, the waters of the OECS are the primary habitat for feeding, mating and calving. Despite this importance, in the past 250 years, the Caribbean is one of only 2 regions in the world to have experienced the extinction of a marine mammal species, the Caribbean monk seal, and there continue to be pressures from increasing use of the ocean, particularly from the tourism and cruise industries. This module has introduced many of the precious and sensitive habitats and species of the Eastern Caribbean. The fact that life on Earth depends on the ocean is indisputable, but the oceans also give life support to the region's economy too, and are crucial to social and cultural cohesion in the islands. This is elaborated further in the coming modules on how humans use the oceans, the threats this causes, and how this can be managed through a blue economy approach. In this module, we've looked at the different ecosystems in the OECS and the role they play in supporting the diversity of species and habitats that make up the rich marine and coastal environment of the region. We also considered some of the threats that are faced by marine ecosystems, including invasive species and unsustainable fishing practices. In Module 3, we look at the human activities which sustain the blue economy of the OECS.